We're headed to Gatesville. Hilltop is one of the first units that I was assigned to when I came to do my 2 years in prison. When I went to prison, I was 19 or 20. I was young, and so Hilltop is where they place youthful offenders. I was on a bus. I was in handcuffs. I was handcuffed from my hand to my waist, from my waist to my feet on a big white bus. I was crying. I didn't want to get off the bus. In fact, I told the officers I wasn't going to get off the bus. And they said, if you don't get off the bus, we're going to have to mace you and take you off the bus. And so I had already been maced before. So I said, okay, I'm getting off. It's a really controlled environment. There's no freedom. It doesn't feel free at all, you know. The world is going on without you. I was depressed here, you know. I don't ever want to come back. It's a lot of despair. You learn about like people's lives and how they grew up without families and how their families have cut them off, and you know, you hear stories about people being mistreated. When you're in here, everybody, even if you're innocent, you're guilty, you know, so you have no dignity. Prison is like a constant reminder of where I don't want to be, you know, so I'm constantly thinking about, you know, my actions and what the consequences could be. But as much as I hated the experience, I feel like it was meant for me to go through it because of where life is headed for me. I'm not a very religious person, but I do believe that the Lord doesn't put any more on you than you can bear. And so it was meant for me to have this experience so that I can have it to rely on when I'm working with, you know, my clients and things. I'm in a position that society says I shouldn't be in, right? As someone who has come to prison and spent that time here, who has like the criminal record that I have, society says I shouldn't have been able to practice as a social worker. Society says I shouldn't be allowed to practice as an attorney. And it's because I am persistent. It's because I don't take no for an answer. It's because I know where I came from. And I was able to see how difficult it was for a lot of the inmates that I was in prison with, for them to, you know, they would get out and they'd come back, you know. And I knew that's not what I wanted. And so I think because of my persistence and help from the community, that I am where I am. I'm very proud of myself. And I'm a damn good mom and I'm a damn good attorney.
What kind of attorney are you?
Mental health. I represent individuals who have been diagnosed with a mental illness.
For Travis County?
Travis County.
And so what's a typical day like for you?
Most of my day is spent visiting with clients either in person or by phone. I also visit them through video chat. And then negotiating with, you know, prosecutors.
You're a public defender.
I'm a public defender.
So does that mean if someone with mental illness does something or breaks the law, then you help them?
Yes, so our office is assigned. The individual has to be indigent. They have to have a mental health diagnosis. And we get appointed by the court. Once it makes it to our office, then, you know, either myself or two other attorneys will be assigned to the case, and then each client is assigned either a caseworker or a case manager.
And how long have you been doing this?
Almost 2 years.
2 years. How long did it take you to get your law degree?
3.
3 years. And before the law degree, is that when you were a social worker?
Yes.
So you were a social worker. I'm making all this clear. We're going to say more about this later. But I want people to understand that you have been a social worker recently, you have a law degree, and we all know how hard it is to get a law degree, and how difficult it can be a lawyer.
Right.
But anyone who knows you, anyone who has listened to you tell your story, I was stunned. I was shocked. And my daughter and I talk a lot about comparing our lives to people whose lives have been a lot harder, and how unfair that is to that person. Like, you don't exist so that I feel better about me. But I can't help but think, whenever I'm feeling bad about myself or feeling stuck, I can't help but think about you. And I tell myself, if Veronica can make it, if she can succeed the way she is succeeding, then I can too. Yeah. That's how I feel. So I want to get into your story. And your story is one that it has to be told kind of chronologically, you know. Because, yeah, the first time you told me the things that have happened with you, it was just like, wow. It was wow.
Yeah.
So where were you, let's ask a couple of questions. Where were you born?
Austin.
You were born here in Austin, Texas. When were you born?
August 1st, 81.
In 81.
Yeah.
And you have, growing up, you had several siblings. The other thing we're not going to do, because a lot of what we're talking about is sensitive, we're not going to say names.
Okay.
But, so try not to. But how many siblings did you have growing up when you were little?
So I have to close my eyes and look.
Count?
Yes. So there were 7 children.
Wow.
8 children.
And you fell where in there?
In the middle.
Okay.
Yeah, I share the middle with my brother.
One more question. Were all 7, certainly you all 7 had the same mom. What about dad?
Some of us share a dad. I don't share a dad with anybody.
Do you know who your dad is?
I don't know who he is. I've been able to narrow it down.
Okay. Okay. And all of that is relevant when we talk about your childhood. So I want to say that must have been 2 years ago now. I can't believe it. Even more than that, 3 or 4 years ago, I came to visit you. More like 2 years ago, I came to visit you. We've been talking about this for a while. And we did an interview. I did an interview with you there. I want to use some of that footage, because having people repeat their trauma, or, you know, repeat what happened to them, I'm beginning to understand how that's traumatic too. So what we're going to do, we're going to tell your story, but we're going to use some of the video that we've already shot, where you told me some things that have happened with you. And one of the things you talked to me about was your mother. So let's listen to what you said then about your mother, and then we'll talk more about it, okay?
Okay.
Okay.
And growing up with my mom, I would say that she loved us. She didn't know how to take care of us. I would say that my mom continued to have children because she found love in those children. My mom was the survivor of domestic abuse. My mother was the survivor of the Louisiana foster care system. In that system, my mom was sexually abused. My mom was physically abused. My mother was not wanted by her mother. And so growing up with my mom, I felt she loved us, but because she wasn't parented, she struggled with how to parent. What I remember about my mother is somebody that was hurting. And because she was hurting, she hurt others, hurt people, hurt other people.
Tell me more about her. You told me that she was in the Air Force. Can you tell me about that and why she got out?
So my mom she didn't spend a whole lot of time in the Air Force. She spent about 10 months in the Air Force.
And at some point she left, I think. Tell me why she left the military.
So my mom's version of it is she was dealing with mental health and she didn't know, you know. I think back then she left the military in 81.
And then with her background, the issues she had with her mother, you said she grew up in the foster care system in Louisiana, and you said she left in 81.
Right.
When did you say you were born?
I was born in 81.
So, okay. What is one of the fondest memories of your mom that you have?
I don't necessarily have one from childhood. It would be from adulthood. So right before she passed. I have a video of us in the car, and she asked me to take her to Whataburger. She wanted their biscuits and gravy. And I kept trying to tell her that biscuits and gravy is only sold in the morning. And so she did not know that I was filming her because she was throwing a tantrum. And so when she realized that I was filming her, she started laughing, and she said, "I can't believe you put me on Front Street like that to all the people on Facebook." And I don't know, it's just really cute. She reminded me of like a little kid, you know, having a tantrum because she couldn't get what she wanted. And we had a lot of memories like that.
Yeah.
I lived in Texas City. She lived in Houston, and you know, I would pick her up, and I took her to Luby's, and she didn't eat a lot of meat. And so I remember before we got there, she was like, "I don't want to go if they don't have vegetables." And I was like, "Mom, stop complaining. They have vegetables, right?" And so when we got in there, she ordered like cabbage, and they had they sold like this kale dish. And so she got kale, and then she got spinach. And I said, "You're gonna be gassy." And I'm glad I don't have to stay with you. And so that just tickled her pink, you know.
When did your mother pass away?
May of 2022.
So just last year. Just last year. So you talked to me about growing up. And one of the things that you were really, really expressive about when we talked was the poverty. The poverty that you experienced as a kid. So I want to listen to what you told me about growing up in poverty, okay?
I remember being hungry a lot, you know, and I'm talking about the kind of hunger that causes your throat to burn. I'm talking about the kind of hunger that causes you to have diarrhea because you're so malnourished. It was rough, you know. I remember bouncing from one house to the next. I didn't know why at the time, but I later learned that it was because my mom couldn't pay her bills. But I also remember my mom giving us the little food stamp dollars from back in the day and being able to run down to the corner store and buy candy, and buy the Canadian clear water. So it wasn't all bad, but when it was bad, it was bad. Yeah.
When it was bad, it was bad.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. That was really hard to listen to. And I've done a lot of writing and reporting on children who are struggling and suffering from malnutrition, like in Africa, places in Africa, and what happens to their bodies. We when we think about starving children, many of us just think they're hungry. You know, we get that they're hungry, but it changes your physical body. Things begin to happen with your blood and your muscles, your brain. So that's kind of what you were describing. You said your throat hurt.
Burned.
Can you talk more about that? Can you say a little bit more about what that was like?
It was horrible. So imagine trying to go to school and learn, right? So when your stomach is grumbling, your throat is burning, you know, you can't control your bowels, right? And so it wasn't even just about the hunger. It's at that point it becomes the societal effects that it has on you, and not being able to make friends, not being able to focus in the classroom. And then because you do so poorly in the classroom, you can't make the friends, you don't want to go to school.
One of the situations that you discussed, I cannot get out of my head. And just because you described it so vividly, you said when you were around 8 or 9 years old, that's when you began to understand why your life was the way it is. You went to the restroom, and I want you to tell the story of the clawfoot bathtub, and you went into the restroom and what you discovered.
Yeah, so we lived in a house, East Austin. The home we lived in, we had wooden floors, right? Those wooden floors had nails that were coming up. So this is an old home, right? Old home, not very well taken care of. We had a clawfoot tub, hated the bathroom.
You said you were afraid of it.
I was afraid of it because you could see under the tub. To me, that's not normal, right?
Yes.
And so I hated that restroom. But I'd always heard that, you know, my mother was doing drugs, but I didn't really know what that meant, right? So another reason why I didn't like the bathroom is because we had a hole in the wall, and this hole allowed you to see into the outside. And so I could hear my mother out there, and there were a couple other people out there. And
you said she would put a sock or a cloth.
A sock was stuffed in the hole. And I've always been the nosy kid. Maybe that's why I'm an attorney, I don't know. But I pushed the sock out of the hole. And this is just how much my curiosity took over, because I forgot about that clawfoot tub. And so I wanted to know what was going on. And so I pushed that sock out of the hole, and I could see my mom doing drugs. She was out there with a couple of friends, and they were out there doing drugs. I could smell it too. I didn't know what the smell was, but I knew it wasn't cigarettes. You know, I had smelled cigarettes before. I had been in the hospital before because of cigarettes, because I was asthmatic, right? And so I knew it wasn't cigarettes. And so that was like my awakening as to what was going on with them.
And I asked you, I said, what kind of drugs? And you said crack.
Crack.
They were smoking crack.
Yeah.
You were 9 years old and looking through a hole in the bathroom wall into the outside, the backyard, and you could hear them, you told me, and you could smell the smell. But yes, at 9, you didn't know what was going on. It took you talking to your older siblings, you said, to kind of
understand what it was. And I don't know at what point I spoke to them about it, but I know that I think I made the connection when my second to oldest sister, we were at the park, and she was made to carry my mom's glass pipe that you put the crack on the end of and light up. And she dropped that pipe and it broke. And I think that's when I put 2 and 2 together, right? And so she cried about it, and she cried about it. And when she got home, she was punished for it, punished for breaking it. And it was a really brutal punishment.
CPS ended up coming to your house. Let's listen to what you say about this, and then we'll talk about that, okay?
I just remember a white guy coming to the house. And back then, that area, if you were white living in that area, it's because you were living like we were living poor, right? So I just remember a white guy, I'll never forget his name, coming to the house, and I were playing in a tree. And had asked where my mother was. And I said to she's probably out getting a crack rock. My mom was in the house. But by then I knew what she did, you know. I remember saying to maybe they'll take us and then we don't have to be hungry anymore and we don't have to wear dirty clothes anymore. And I never thought about the fact that we would all be like separated.
That's hard.
I almost cried.
Well,
yeah.
7 siblings, so 7 of you. This is your family, no matter what you're going through. Do you want to say more about that? You never thought about the fact that you would be separated.
Yeah.
But the part that really breaks my heart too is the idea of the idea of actually being taken meant you might be taken care of better.
Right.
You might be taken care of better.
Right. So
do you want to say more about that?
That just was, we had talked about that. You know, my 2 older sisters had already left. They had already left, right? And so anytime my mom didn't provide, my 2 older sisters did, right? So whether it be because, it's because they went out and they committed crimes, right? To make sure that we had something, right? And so when they left, I'm next in line, right?
Wow.
And
you were 9.
I was 9. And so things were difficult after they were gone. And I don't know how long they had been gone. But I just remember that my brother and I would have conversations about a better life, you know. But it never dawned on us that there were so many of us that we would be separated. He went in the house. About to cry. He went in the house. He talked to my mother. And this wasn't the first time that CPS had come out to our home, but he went into the house. He talked to my mother.
You know what? I want you to drink some of your water. It's okay. Do you want to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay.
He talked to my mother, and he then, at the time, I was the oldest kid at the house because by then I had already run away. Which is probably why CPS was there. I remember sitting me on his lap and explaining to me that my mom was sick and that she had agreed that she couldn't take care of us and that we weren't going to live with her anymore. At the time, I don't know what that meant to me. All I could think about was I felt like life was going to be normal and then my mom would eventually get her life together and get us back, you know. Because of that separation, to this day I don't have I feel like I don't have relationships with my siblings like I should.
What do you remember feeling like not having that relationship with your siblings?
I think in that moment you could tell I missed them, right?
Yeah.
And I think that filming that made me realize I missed them.
For how long were you in the foster care system?
I exited at the age of 18, 1 month after I turned 18.
So another 9 years. That was your whole, teenage years, young adult. You were in foster care. So there is a lot that happened to you, a lot that we can't get to right here. But in those 9 years of being in foster care, can you kind of distill for us what that was like? I know you were in foster homes, you were in some shelters, but can you tell us in your words what the next 9 years were like for you?
So the first couple of years was an adjustment, right? So my first placement was at LifeWorks, but back then it was called Spectrum. And so
is that like a group home or a
Spectrum? Now it's a shelter for homeless youth. But back then they, I guess, had a contract with the department to place foster youth. My brother and I then moved to Carper's Cove. So we moved to Carper's Cove. He and I were in a home together for a little bit, but we fought too much, like physically fought.
Yes.
But that was our relationship in our home, right?
Yes.
But he and I were like thick as thieves, right? So if you mess with him, then you mess with me. If you mess with me, then you mess with him, right? But I was tougher than he was,
Yes.
right? So he was, and he, I can remember when I would get in trouble, he'd go to my mom, "Who whooped my Veronica?" And my mom would say,
What would he say?
"Who whooped my Veronica?" And so my mom said, "You don't get your butt out of here, I'm gonna whoop you too," And so he would leave. But yeah, he was like but we fought a lot, right? And I think that that was concerning. So we ended up splitting.
Yeah. We talked about anger, and you told me that one of your favorite musicians, recording artists is Tupac.
That's my man.
Why?
Because I felt like his music resonated with me, right? I feel like it spoke to me, like it spoke my life, right? And while it spoke my life, in some way, it gave me like hope, right? And so he sounded angry, but if you like listen to his word, like if you listen to what he's saying, he's giving hope. He's talking about better tomorrow. And my favorite song was "Me Against the World" because that's how I felt. I felt like it was me against the world.
Yeah.
I remember feeling anger. Anger is an emotion I'm very familiar with, and I think it's the only emotion that I felt at the time. And reason being is because although I had been removed from my home and I wasn't hungry anymore, and maybe my appearance was improved, wasn't the stinky kid in school anymore, being removed from my home, I was supposed to be in a better place going into a foster home. But in that home, I was being sexually abused.
The anger makes sense to me. So you described to me at length what the next 9 years were like for you. And yeah, there were some moments where the anger came out. Do you want to talk about that at all? Any specific episodes? I totally get it. I mean, I understand it.
I think that yes, there were times when I would get, especially around holidays, right? Because while I got visits, and I don't remember if I always got them or not, but when I got visits, it wasn't really like on the holiday. The holidays you were visiting with your foster parents.
And in those 9 years, what was your mother doing? Was she in trouble with what was she doing?
So I later learned about what she was doing. So like my mom was given a considerable amount of time to kind of get her crap together.
Yes.
When we first entered foster care. Yeah. I remember having visits with her, right? I remember her telling us she was going to get us back. And that was part of my anger too, is she had made me these promises and it's not happening, right?
And you fought getting adopted because you were loyal to her, you said, and wanted to get back with your mother.
Yeah. And it never happened, right? So, and then I later learned that she was in and out of jail. She was still doing drugs, right? And eventually at 15, I learned that she was in prison. I was waiting in like a hall or foyer area. I was sitting at a table, minding my own business. And approached me to ask me my name, told him my name. And then we started hanging out. And then as a result of our hanging out, and realizing that we lived in the same dorm, I lived on the first floor, he lived on the second floor, we, I guess, started being intimate. Yeah, we started being intimate. With that was the first time I actually had alcohol. And I remember being in his dorm room, and then there's a period that I don't remember. So he had given me a drink, it was cognac. And then I just remember waking up very violent. And my memory is blurry.
That's not a good start to a relationship. But that's what you remember happening. What do you think happened?
Well, today he slipped me a Mickey. Right, but I thought it was just my response to the alcohol.
Yeah. So your whole history, you managed to make it this far. You get through high school. You're in college. You were minding your own business.
Minding my own business.
And here he comes. And that was really the beginning of some of the most traumatic experiences I've ever heard. We're not going to get really specific about it, but tell us what the relationship was like. How did it start, and then how did it evolve?
Like in the video. Look.
Not good.
Like in the video, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so then the next day after that, right? He came downstairs. No, he called me. I was laying in my dorm, in my bed, again, minding my own business. I was sore, right? I'm really trying to figure out where all these bumps and bruises come from, right? And so he calls me on the phone to tell me about a guy that he saw leaving my dorm room. And he describes the guy to me. And I remember saying to him, I have no idea who you're talking about. Mind you, my dorm window sat the trash can, the dumpster, sat behind like my dorm. Like I could look out my window and see the dumpster. So the guy that he ends up telling me about is walking from the dumpster with a trash can in his hand. So I was like, maybe he went to go throw his trash in the dumpster. I don't know. Right? So I hang up the phone on him because I'm like, you're being stupid, right? And so then he makes his way down to my dorm. My roommate lets him in. He comes into my room. He starts an argument. He hits me. And so I ask him to leave. He won't leave. Like he's pushing me. So I go inside. the kitchen, and I grab a knife and I say, if you don't, and it's not a big knife, like it's
You
like the
described it
blade
as
is no
paring knife,
yeah,
fruit or something.
yeah,
Yes.
and so
A knife's a knife.
a knife's a knife, but it is,
yes,
you know, and
right.
so he leaves, right, and then he leaves out of the dorm, and then he comes back down again, and he hits me, and so I say, you want to know what, you think I'm playing? So I shut the door, I go grab the knife again. Really, my intention is to scare him. My intention was never to, when I picked up the knife, it was never to cause harm to him. It was just to scare him to leave me alone, right? Because I'm thinking about what happened the night before, and now this, right? And so I chase him around the dorm. We end up by his car, and I tell him, you know, if he doesn't leave me alone, I'm gonna drag this knife down the side of your car, and I'm gonna, you know, because he was real into his car, right? And so he calls me a name. We finish chasing each other, and he falls down. I stand over him and I say, you know, you're no better than any guy that has ever dated my mom, and you know, you're just like them. You know, you beat on them. Next thing I know, I had swung down and I had sliced the side with the knife, right? I don't remember thinking I'm gonna cut you with the knife. It just kind of happened, right? And so then,
and just so we're clear, you said you reached down and you cut him with the knife on his side.
On his side.
And then what happened?
So he jumps up and he say, "You crazy bee?" And I say, "Come back, let me help you, like, bandage it," right? Right? Because I shocked myself, right? And because and I told my attorney this, like, I said, I don't know what got into me, right? Like, when I picked up the knife, it was not my intent to cause harm to him.
Right.
My intention was just simply to scare him, to make him leave me alone, right?
Right.
But.
Right. We talked a little bit about the aftermath. And again, I am understanding it. I mean, if he laid hands on you, I mean, you know, but you told us a little bit about what happened in the aftermath. Let's listen to that.
The school took action or adverse action against me, and I was suspended for a semester. I wasn't allowed to complete my summer. I was asked to leave campus as soon as I could.
You, again, everything you've endured, you make it to college, you meet this person, this happens, and you have to leave. Even after that, you didn't leave the area right away, and you continued to see him. Why would you continue to see him?
I can't answer you that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I can tell you is that I think maybe I was in love. I was young too, you know? I was young, probably embarrassed.
Yep.
Right. Hopeful that it would stop. It wouldn't get any worse.
And I'm not judging you. I think many of us women have stayed in relationships that, I don't know why, but I did. Being in love, or I'm not a therapist, but I can guarantee you, because I've talked to therapists, that a lot of your upbringing had a lot to do with your thinking and why you would stay in a relationship that
justifies behavior.
Right.
Yeah. Make it about you. You know, there are times that I did. I can remember if I would just do this or if I would just do that, or you know. But that was like later. And
so when you say later, even after everything, after the cutting, were you taken to jail? How long were you in jail for cutting him?
Couple days. I was out on bond. I'm not sure when I don't remember when I got the probation. I would have to look at the paperwork. But,
okay, but
yeah. But eventually it was probation.
And you were still with him. We're not going to talk about all of the specific things, but people can imagine. I could imagine if it started that way, it probably was not going to get better. It was probably going to get worse.
It got worse.
Said. How much longer were you with him after that happened?
a year.
You called the police yourself because you said you were exhausted. You were done with fighting. The police come, and describe quickly, if you can, what happened when the police arrived.
I tell them I've got a warrant for my arrest, and I tell them that he's taken my wallet and he's hidden it, and I just want to go to jail, but I want to go to jail with my stuff. You know,
Right.
I had put on a coat. I put on stuff to stay warm in the jail because it's cold when you go, right? And the police officers actually said to me, if you don't have any family you can go to, we'll let you go and you can sort this stuff out later. And one of the officers was ready to fight him, right?
Right.
But I said, no, I do have family, but they have already tried to help me, and I burned that bridge. So I just want to go to jail and deal with my charges.
You're in prison, and who do you find out is in the same prison with you?
So they moved her at my request.
Oh, well, explain what happened.
Yeah, so when I first got to prison, I asked to be placed on the same unit with my mom. But my mom was on Marlin. That's where the big timers are. So they're doing like life sentences. They doing like time. I was just doing a measly 2 years.
Yes, measly 2 years.
Yeah, I was just doing a measly 2 years.
Was she in Gatesville, though, or in a whole other?
She was in Marlin, Texas.
Oh, okay.
Outside of,
you said that.
Outside of Huntsville.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so when I got to classification, and I asked to be placed on the unit with my mom, they were like, no, not at all. And so I cried, right? I kept asking to visit with my mom. And I was such a bad actor in prison. I was young.
Oh, you mean a bad?
I was such a bad actor.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I didn't care about getting in trouble. I was angry.
Yeah.
I didn't care about getting in trouble. I didn't care about how I talked to people. And so the warden talked to, I guess, the warden at the other unit. And this is my mom's version of what happened. They came to her and they said, Miss Lockett, your daughter is on the Gatesville satellite, and she is requesting to visit with you. She's got 6 more months in jail, and she has given my officers hell.
Yes.
Can you please? Will you please? We're gonna put you over there with her.
You handle this.
Just make her be good for the next 6 months.
Oh.
My biggest fear in prison is being raped.
Oh, yeah.
And so someone's rubbing my back.
Oh.
And they haven't said anything yet, right? And I say, I got my eyes closed. I'm clenched real tight. And I say, if you don't get your hands off me, I'm going to get up and beat the shit out of you.
Oh, my God.
And then a familiar voice says, I can't believe you talk like that. And so I look, because the voice sounds familiar, but I still hadn't placed it as my mom.
Yes.
The voice sounds familiar. And so I peek open, and then it's a face that looks familiar. It looks like my sister. I say, Mama! So I jump up and I give her a hug, and I start crying, right? And she said, and she starts laughing, and they let us hug or whatever. And then she said, your ass been over here cutting up, you know? She said, these people brought me over here to make you behave your last 6 months. She told me, you better not get me in trouble, right? And so that was like our first encounter. I was like, I'm not going to get you in trouble. And what do? I leave my bed area to go to her bed area. She said, here you go, already. You already out of place.
Your mother.
Yes, but they understood. And so after that, they said, stay in your bedding area. And so,
but your mother was you and your mother were in prison at the same time, which is just mind-blowing. But you got to spend time with her in prison. Time that you didn't get to spend when you were 10, 11, 12,
I obtained both my bachelor and master's in social work.
Where did you go?
Texas State.
Texas State. So you got a bachelor and a master's in social work. Wow. Okay.
And I had became a mom.
And you became a mom.
Yeah. So I did that with my daughter. Part of that journey, I did it while being homeless. And then the other part of that journey was while living in public housing.
Yes.
And then afterwards, I went to work as a social worker. I worked with families who lived in poverty like me, had CPS involvement. I worked with child victims of human trafficking. And then I worked in the Section 8 public housing sector. I managed a gym for a year. I took a break.
Managed a gym?
I managed a gym for a year. Took a break. And then went back, but this time I went back to a housing authority. And then while there, one of my supervisors said, "You ever thought about going to law school?" I said, "Yeah, but I don't know if I can become a lawyer. I've got criminal history, you know." And he was like, "You should just try." I was able to get a social work license. Maybe I could talk them into a law license, you know. And I had met an individual whose wife was an attorney, and he had talked to me about it, but he didn't tell me he was going to help me make it happen, right? He just thought it was interesting. He was doing his dissertation on foster care youth who had left foster care and had gotten an education with the tuition waiver. I had applied to TSU, I think U of H, and they both told me no because of the criminal history, not because of the score on the LSAT, but the criminal history. And then I'm gonna say her name. I met Marcy, right? I met Marcy, which was Sam's wife, the guy that had come to talk to me about his dissertation. And she said, "A new law school is starting, and I think that you would be a good fit for it because they're looking for like non-traditional students, you know." And she was like, I think she told me she clerked for the judge at one point. And she was like, "I could talk to him about it if you're interested." I was like, "Yeah."
Yes.
Yeah.
What school?
UNT.
And so is that where you got your law degree?
Yep. I was accepted into the third class.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank God for Marcy.
Yeah. Yeah. And Judge Ferguson. Yeah.
And Judge Ferguson. How long did it take you? You said 3 years to get your law degree, and with 2 kids.
With 2 kids.
And you did it. And what did that feel like when you graduated, or what happens at the end of a?
You graduate.
Okay, so then what did you feel?
So law school was I'm sorry to say, it was a bitch.
Yes, I'm sure.
It stirred up a lot of emotions that I felt when I was in foster care, right? I ended up in therapy, right? Because you're talking to somebody who excelled at school who excelled in high school, who excelled in undergrad and grad school, and now I'm in law school and I ain't doing as well as I want to do, right?
Yeah.
But then I just had to get a new perspective, right? Because I had to think about, I already have a career. I just need this paper, right? And then once I get this paper, I'm going to go fight with these people about this license.
I know.
Right?
It's like never ending.
Right, yeah.
The struggle.
And so once I got a new perspective on what I was doing in law school, then my performance improved, right? And I started, and so when I graduated, it was like, oh shit, I did it. I might not be in the top 10%, but I did it.
You did it.
Right? And so it felt good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it felt good. And the people that helped me get there were there to,
Yeah.
to celebrate me.
It's phenomenal. The whole trajectory of your life is really, really phenomenal. You said when we went to visit the prison, society says I should not be where I am. Society says I shouldn't be a social worker or an attorney. And I agree with you. That's what society, it's what we think about people who have spent time in prison. But what do you say to that?
I say that if people go to prison and they do their time and they dish their sentence, that should be it, right? They should be given the opportunity to try again. I think people deserve second chances, right? And I think that's what I got, is a second chance. I think as a society, we have to do better in supporting people in becoming the best version of themselves. And I think that's what I had. I know that's what I had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I am so honored to know you. I'm sorry that you went through what you went through as a child, and yet I hear you when you say that the things you went through made you who you are today. And I have so much admiration. I just honor you, and you inspire me. You make me want to be better. You make me want to stop complaining and stop feeling sorry for myself, and to just be better. Be and do better, and reach my dreams.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
We'll see you on the next episode of Brainstorm Black.
All right.